Hello, everyone. Welcome to this exciting session today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Luca Ferraro. I'm a global sustainability leader at Cisco. I'm joining from Spain today. And on behalf of the Total Brighter Institute, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us on this topic, which is climate, tech, and AI. Innovations for a sustainable future. We've got a stellar panel today joining us from different countries. Before we begin, though, I just want to let you know a bit about the Total Brighter Institute, which was created to promote collaboration across public and private sectors with a focus on business, culture, and diversity. It looks at reshaping and developing collaborations and partnering practices with a view to improving and securing business and economy. So a core concept of the Institute is the think tank for partnerships in AI and cybersecurity. And the think tank allows the Institute to bring together experts like today from public and private sectors and academia, and allows us to develop collaboration and partnering practices. So if you're not already a member of the Institute, we invite you to visit the website and learn more on how you can participate as well. So before we jump into the discussion today, I'd like to take a few moments for each of the panelists to introduce themselves. So I'm going to go in alphabetical order with the first names. So I'll start with you, Elena. We can't hear you, Elena. Maybe you're on mute. Let's switch to Amy then.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Also, can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Wait a minute. Elena?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I'll go ahead until Elena get her mute button off. Amy, I'm here. I'm really happy to join today. This is a topic that is close to my heart, and I'm glad to have this platform to discuss and start talking about things that really matter to me. So thank you for this opportunity. I am currently a principal director in Lenovo at the AI Center of Excellence, and I have a PhD in AI, cognitive AI. A lot of people differ in that. So I spent my life trying to understand the human mind. Finally figured it out. A bit disappointed, but that's life. I started my journey very early on in my life by having, an obsession, fascination with robots, in the 80s with Terminator and all, and wanted my own. Started to read every book and tried to learn as much as I can, and, started in academia, teaching and studying at the same time. And finally found a professor that is focused in the exact topic that I wanted to investigate, which is cognitive AI and understanding the human reasoning process. It comes from the obsession of understanding human bias. That led me to understand a lot of things that I was not aware of, and I chose to use everything I know for something that would make me feel good. So I started my own startup in mental health, AI mental health with OpenMind, to help provide support using voice analytics. Moved from academia to entrepreneurship, and that led me to R&D, research and development. Moved from there to the next thing, my other startup, and I knew that I needed to understand how the AI works end to end very quickly. Everything was going very fast, and the development and advancement. So decided to go to one of the big four, understand as much as possible across industries. Worked in EY, also in the AI Center of Excellence and AI Emerging Technology Department. Learned a lot. It was an eye-opening experience. My mission was, since the beginning, is to understand how AI works, from inception, academia, until it comes to our home as a service or a product. After EY, I wanted to do something that I find myself enjoying, which is AI Operational Center of Excellence, and was glad to see Lenovo starting their own practice, clean canvas, can establish it all from scratch. And that's where I am now. Hopefully, I can do something good with the knowledge that I have end to end, but I think it starts here. It came completely by coincidence, and I'm really, really lucky to be actually having this platform to apply everything that I learned in something that actually matter, and I can sleep at peace at night, not being filled with guilt. That's me.
Great, thanks, Amy, and Elena. Welcome. If you want to go next.
Thank you. Does everyone hear me all right now?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Amy, it's really great to hear about your background and be introduced to you. I really enjoy meeting people who have, a passion for this field. I also I work specifically in climate technology, mostly working with engineers in AI and machine learning around environmental solutions. I worked previously, my career mostly started working in a foundation with the family in Switzerland that started WWF. Was there for 11 years, opening up multiple international offices with that company, and really, having a really strong look at what, how the general public worked within natural solutions, natural capital, wildlife conservation, and eco solutions. So from there, I went on to Amazon AWS on the deep learning team, really delved very deeply into how different technologies and advanced technologies could benefit the nonprofit sector, and obviously a lot of government things as well, incentivized programs, how we could help make solutions work much faster with technology. And from there opened up my own company called The Big Wild, which we are very specific on filling gaps for areas that are needed in working between engineers and ecologists. It's a very tricky field. It's very left brain, right brain, to be able to get the two to both match their needs for the most impactful projects. So that's very international, and we're quite all over the board with things that we work with, from wetland restoration to individual ID of not just species, but which animal within that species, for more ground truth data collection and conservation. And now I do a lot of reviews of projects, a lot of consulting projects to see. There's a lot of startups in this field, which is wonderful to see. There's always the problem of multiple startups trying to do the same thing, looking for the same amount of funding. If that funding gets diversified, it's very difficult to have, real impact. So we really try to network for the most highest level impact for the climate, as we do want to match these 2030 and 2050 targets as best that we can. So I work a lot with advising, consulting as a judge and panel expert on those kind of fields.
Thank you, Elena. That's impressive as well. I'm going to continue in the alphabetical order. Ravi, if you're okay to go next.
Thanks, Luca. And thanks, Elena and Amy, for a wonderful introduction of yours. So, to be honest, I'm just a spiritual being who has come for human experience on this planet. The first introduction. Second is, like, with my human experience, I would like to enlighten others also, that they can have the best in class lifestyle and, let's say, the work culture over there on the planet, where we can help and nurture the mother nature altogether. So having said that, I've got around 16 to 20 years of experience in different domains, especially in terms of AI and machine learning. I had been I got my doctorate in risk analytics frameworks, that in the year 2012. And before that, I was more into the financial risk management perspectives. I started working on climate risk long time back, because when we were introduced to weather derivatives, I found that it's going to be very significant, in the future. It really opened my eyes in terms of how exactly we are digging our mother nature, and we are making use of all those kind of resources which are actually very much limited to us, right? So wanted to have a sanitation over there in terms of having the planet health altogether to maintain, and contributed to certain direct and indirect projects to ISRO and the other the organizations where we were working on remote sensing to satellite imagery analysis to working on NDVI classifications, monitoring the health of the planet altogether, and currently working on AI rovers, where this is basically the leaping of generative physical AI domain, where we are working on certain aspects which can not only monitor the planet, but also they can fix up the issues happening at the global level, at industry level, when we are talking about large enterprises, industries where carbon is the main content to get emitted out of it. Talking about GHG protocols, identifying them, and helping industries, academicians, universities aware that how exactly every individual is very much responsible here to identify the carbon footprint, and they can themselves monitor what we are causing the harm to the nature. And lastly, would like to say that with the continuous conscious efforts, we definitely can mitigate the risks which are associated with the climate. And no need to say that what kind of health risk we are having, what kind of planet risk we are having right now, owing to the kind of the recent shifts in the climate. But yeah, would like to contribute in the best possible way today to understand and make everybody aware that this is the time right now to democratize AI for climate action altogether as a core responsibility of the entire team. So thank you so much. Thanks to you.
Thank you, Ravi. And last but not least, Vijay, over to you.
Thank you, Luca, and thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Thank you for having me. My name is Vijay Karia. I'm the CEO and founder of OptiCloud. We're a company using AI-driven solutions to reduce digital waste. A lot of people don't realize the impacts of digital waste and how harmful it is for the planet. And we're working on cleaning it up and optimizing cloud infrastructure. So, think of your iPhones, think of your computers, all your junk email. We're working to clean up this digital waste because it's having large carbon emissions and impact on the planet. My background, I've been working in technology for over 15 years. I was a former CTO of a very large healthcare company. I've worked in startups, mid-sized, large companies like the New York Stock Exchange, helping manage technology for them. I've also worked for large private equity companies, managing global technology and merging various companies, which is really where I started seeing the impact of a lot of this waste. Many large companies over-provision their resources. As companies acquire and grow, they don't necessarily grow responsibly. And, given all of my background and experience, I always do things that align with my heart. I was a former professional tennis player. That's kind of my real background, where I started when I was a young kid. And I played on the ATP tour until I was about 22. And when I stopped, I promised myself I would do two things, that I would do something that teaches me every day. I love to learn. And so that's how I got into technology. Technology is always changing. AI is the now. We'll see what happens in the future. And I really believe that AI can do a lot of good for the planet. And I've been able to align my heart with my technical skills now and try to actually reduce global carbon emissions by over 1% with our platform.
Wow, impressive as well, Vijay. So, I'm personally extremely impressed with all your backgrounds. I feel humbled by the collective experience you all have. With all this experience we have on this call, I think we're going to have a great discussion. And let's start with looking at the topic for today, which is climate tech and AI, and start with defining climate tech, which I hope you agree is about the technology and products which help mitigate and adapt to climate change. And today, I'd like to look at different ways, with practical examples of how AI has already or is planned to help with, climate change solutions. And maybe starting with a question I'd like to throw out there first. What does, and you can answer, one by one. In general, how have you seen AI until now helping, with climate tech? Have you already seen some examples and some results in your experience?
Is that address to me? Sorry.
Yeah. Let's continue with the same order, probably more
Yeah,
logical.
my brain will catch that, so that's better. Same. We'll start with me. So I know that from what I see every day, it's always the wind turbine. You hear them and you see them. That's one of the things. Also for climate tech, like being in America, living in America, there was a lot of news about, the fires always happening, and there's always trials or experimentation with using predictive analysis or something that would predict before the crisis happen. But it's not at the stage, I think, that it should be given the technology that we have. But I think there's an angle to it. There's a reason for that. It's usually AI is not a magic box, I would say. It all depends on what we feed it. It's just like a human. It's like whatever you give it, it will give you. It's the key is the data. And I keep repeating that to all our clients and everyone that will try to improve whether the accuracy or the application of AI. AI is just an algorithm. If then, that's it. It's all about what you feed it. That's what you will get. So all these, I think, issues that we're discussing today, I think the key or the angle to solving everything is focusing on having, instead of reactive into like the problems that are happening in climate and sustainability and whatever issues that we're discussing, why don't we do like a proactive or preventative approach? It's all about having the data, not just centralized, but accessible. If you have it beforehand, you can prevent it beforehand. But afterward, I feel like things will happen and then we have to solve them. So if we optimize, for example, the grids, if we have the optimization of energy system, if there's real-time data, which happens here frequently in Ireland, if there's real-time data about something that potentially can crash, a grid or a wind turbine, it can be avoided if there's access for that data at real time, not afterwards. So there will be saving energy. We won't spend our days in the dark. At this time, at this day and age, I feel like we should have figured out by now that we have the predictive analysis model. We have all the algorithms are there. I think it's the accessibility that is the issue, having real-time data accessible beforehand instead of, something happening and then we have to fix it. True believer, data-driven insight, data-driven decision. And it's even applicable that when we have across sustainability, climate, energy, if we actually can apply or have a centralized, accessible, real-time data, a lot can be avoided. Not just that, there will be efficiency at scale. That's what I'm advocating for. I'm going to keep repeating it. I think a lot today. You're going to be sick of me, but I think it's kind of the root cause of the majority of maybe even the delay in the development, or how do we fix our problem with climate change or sustainability or energy? Real-time access for the real data, so we can have a preventative approach instead of reactive one.
Great points. Yeah, thanks. I have so many questions, but I'll let Elena continue then on your point of view, Elena.
Well, I would be surprised if any of us have a different point of view. If you work at all in technology, the biggest problem is data. And not only do we have enough data, but is there access to the data that we currently have? Those are across the board issues, not only in climate tech. They're particular to climate tech because it's quite new that there's any effort going into collecting data. And when we talk about climate, we're talking about the environment. And, I would take, and I'm sure Amy agrees with me, but I would take it one step back even further beyond the need for more data or access to the data. The first step is the finances to be able to get the data and the actual capital necessity that is put on our economy that makes that a viable necessity for finances and the financial market to be engaged within. This is my number one issue, and this is where I work very deeply in natural capital. Of course, it's sort of the chicken before the egg, because right now you have to have very high level data and analysis of that data and accessibility of that data to be able to prove why you need finances to be able to collect and analyze and provide that data. So it is extremely difficult, and this is what is slowing down AI's efforts in climate change. It's actually a financial issue completely across the board. If we were able to say, look, we need to make some changes to a city or a town that is one of the first reactive viable areas to climate change. We need to look at what areas, how can we help this? We first have to look at the environment. It's usually a lot of things with hydrology. What tributaries, waterways, wetlands have we degraded to the point that they're flooding when it does rain too much? What areas are in these high fire zones, and how can we use predictive modeling to be able to detect that? But if you're waiting for the data to be able to take a decision on where to go so that you can put money into the project, but you haven't first put money into collecting the data, you're never going to get there. And this is, in the last 5 to 10 years, exactly why we're not reaching the 2015 goals, the 2020 goals, the 2030 goals. The money has to come first for us to be able to get the data to be able to get there. And I will say it's really interesting, some of the things that we have here, even locally. I'm in the Silicon Valley. We are one of the first groups to get these incredible AI-powered and generated fire detection models. So, and the point of these detection models is so that if it detects the specified molecules for wildfire, not barbecues, not house glowing warming fires, but actually wildfires, then it sends an alert out to everyone within that community that a fire has been detected. Well, this is massive for the people who are in high fire zone areas. One of the major problems is that we get alerted very late, and that the fire stations get alerted very late. It doesn't take long for a small fire to take over thousands of homes. So this is incredible. And so that's a very direct way where we can see AI usage in something like fire. Now, there's a lot of finances behind fire because you're talking about insurance. And insurance is one of the largest money makers in America. So there's reason why you're going to put money behind building data accessible projects like fire detection. On the second hand, in this area, very same area, in this there is a section of our main highway here between San Francisco and San Jose, which is the Silicon Valley, and it's called the deadliest highway in the world. And the reason is because of wildlife vehicle collision accidents. There is no crossroads for any wildlife. It goes on, it's a 5-lane massive highway. You're separating 2 very large nature preserves for hundreds of miles. It's extensive, and Caltrain Transportation is in charge of a lot of that, and they are very interested and got millions of dollars of funding last year to be able to look at where they should put in wildlife crossings. It's not only to help save endangered species, it's also to save humans. And they reached out to a lot of groups to be able to say, okay, who's got data on wildlife around here? We're not going to pay you for the data. We don't have money. There's zero funding for paying for data. But once you give us the data, then we'll be able to utilize, and analyze that data and make decisions off of it. And this is across the board reasons why we don't get anywhere. So I would say this is the number one issue, is actually natural capital financing.
Everybody's hoarding the data.
Yeah.
Like harder. If it's accessible, a lot could be prevented.
Yeah, great points, Elena. So anything to add, Ravi or Vijay?
Exactly. So, I have some contrarian opinion here. I definitely, would like to discuss those particular pointers first. So for me, AI change is something which is going to be constant, right? So change is the only constant thing in the world. So we are actually addressing the change, which is bound to happen. What exactly we need to address is the risk part, because risk is which is going to be highly uncertain. Changes could be certain. We know that the climate is going to behave like that. Weather is going to behave like that, because this is how exactly humans are behaving today, owing to the growing capitalism and unlimited access to the equity, and rightly said by Alina that it's developed by the financial markets, by the way. So having green indices into picture, having green practices, green technologies would be the solution. But let's talk about what is the major problem. So the major problem which I see is the climate risk. And when it comes to the risk part, we need to understand that how exactly we can use the historical records and take the particular descriptives, diagnose it further. Let's leverage certain predictive models and whatnot. And then comes the major problem, as everybody mentioned, that the data and the models, right? So we definitely have opportunities there that we can play with a number of data models, and not only data models but ML models as well. And there are some out of box approaches which I'm going to discuss right away. So for example, I don't have a data right now, and I'm talking about a student who is basically in the university. It could be a scientist at NASA, right? It could be a doctor who is having the monitoring over the patients, right? So in my opinion, there is no problem of data. It's having abundant data rather, right? We just need to identify how exactly I fix up this data problem. How can I use this data for identifying that, hey, how simple calculations can be made out of the data which I'm working upon, and I can save the planet, thereby understanding the risk, or owing to the the kind of my usage of the technology, my devices, the energy consumption, electricity bills, and all. So for me, whosoever is working on this planet, whosoever is listening this call, the kind of panel discussion, they are all aware that, or they can be aware that, hey, this is very simplistic calculation which we need to make. Even if I use a large language model, it creates 284,000 kg of your CO2. So that is basically going to impact the entire universe by having that kind of resolution. It means that I need to access the data which is already available, but in the best possible way. Now comes the what is the best possible way. So what I have got the patent upon is, like, me and my colleagues at Compunal, where I'm working as a director over there in AI and emerging technologies. So what we have done over there is basically we have identified certain ways and means by which we can have AI rovers in place. These rovers would be going to those areas, remote areas, where exactly human reach is nearly impossible. We can have certain agents which are there in the industries which can identify and track what is beyond threshold limit of carbon which is being emitted, what is beyond threshold limit, let's say the energy which is consumed. So those thresholds need to capture, those particular systems need to be embedded within the current ecosystem of your enterprises, your healthcare units, or your education institutions, wherever we talk about, because it's individual responsibility to take care of this planet, and that's why we have come here for to safeguard the entire planet. So now this particular approach of rovers is basically not only limited to the physical AI part, it is generative physical AI. It means that whosoever is not understanding the data, generative AI engines could help them to understand the data in the best possible way. If you talk about images, if you talk about satellite workarounds, if you talk about, let's say, the scan of infrareds, it could be remote sensing, it could be any particular XYZ data, which exactly could be helping me to capture the information upon. The important thing is that on what basis, on for what particular areas I need to capture the information. So the very first thing is that energy is consumed, and therefore it's basically most of the carbon contents is getting released in creating energy, by the way. So that's again when it comes to the principles of E is equals to mc square, that it's equally acceptable in the equilibrium side. So it means that when I create, I also have byproducts, and these byproducts we need to keep a track upon. And when it comes to the energy consumption, electricity or computes, the cloud, I think Vijay would be talking about those particular aspects from the cloud perspective. But yeah, definitely on the global arena, if I talk about the data centers, which are emitting huge emissions, there are let's say the mines where exactly the carbons are getting released to a level which exactly is beyond threshold. We need to have those kind of agents which can just identify beyond threshold limits, attach a penalty when it is beyond your allowed limits. And this particular goes in the hands of the regulators, because without regulatory authorities, without a uniform system of universal governance, we can't work out on that. Scope 1, 2, and 3 need to be understood by everybody, that what is GHG protocol, how exactly it is useful for healthcare unit, how it is useful for a kind of a cloud practitioner, how it is useful for the software developers basically. So if they understand scope 1, 2, 3 elements in the clear fashion, I think most of the problems are clear, because we are having the data, we know that how exactly we can handle this data, and that's where AI comes to play. And that's the generative physical AI approach which we can have to work out on the cumbersome data sets, cumbersome models. computer vision elements, right? Even drones and satellite images, as I mentioned, they can keep and monitor these things, right? Few months back, I got kind of invitation for one project where NASA was looking forward for having the thought process and R&D on how exactly we can prevent the astronauts where cosmic energies are there and how we can protect them. So similarly, if we have these AI rovers on the planet who can keep a check on the health of the planet, where our reach is very limited, where we can't have that particular timeline because we are busy in making money, right? So those agents could be worked out in the automated fashion, and they can, without any capitalism requirements, without getting into huge investments, they can be up and running, and they can just track and penalize those who are actually the culprits, and then basically they can have the system of control by the entire unified mechanism of governance. I think that's the smallest way I can definitely talk about. But yeah, we can dig the details in terms of how exactly it becomes more technological important for us for when we go for risk assessments of the planet's IPCC's climate risk framework. That's again we can talk about in detail maybe at a later stage. We can talk about task force on climate related financial disclosures, talking about Lana's the pain points which she was talking about, geospatial data and remote sensing, including NASA, ESA, and NOAA kind of remote sensing data that can trace the environmental changes and can track the entire climate risk over a period of time. And lastly, it's like how exactly we can give recommendations to the individual users, whosoever it would be, in terms of vulnerabilities. ND gain index, climate vulnerability indexes, this we need to play with, and we can definitely come with the best in class risk disclosure understanding, and we can have proper ESG practice reporting everything. I'll discuss some of the case studies also, maybe at a later stage. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ravi. Wow, you touched on so many different dimensions. My mind was, thinking about all different directions we could go into. But I want to leave
all generated by Elena and Amy. They were discussing. So yeah,
yeah. So Vijay, do you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. I'll add some quick comments. And I just want to thank Amy and Elena and Ravi for their comments, because really, I think at the heart of it, it's a collective action that will make a difference here. And to Elena's point, we need funding. Funding is very key to drive these initiatives forward. And back to your question, I mean, the intersection of AI and climate tech is transformative. And AI's ability to process vast amounts of data and create actionable insights is critical for addressing the complex climate challenges. I think what you heard from Ravi and what you heard from Elena and Amy is that, this is a global problem. The Earth is not separated by countries. It's not separated by boundaries. It is one system that collectively works together. And that includes the ocean, that includes the rainforest, that includes all the different subterranes throughout the earth. And, we as humans and from different parts of the world, we really work in boundaries. And for the AI to have the most impact, we need the data on the health of the planet. The planet is one planet. It is not, there are no boundaries. And so to Ravi's point, I totally agree with you on the rovers. We need to collect the data first. That being said, the AI can be used and is being used today for many amazing projects. We're using it to clean up cloud infrastructure and manage energy consumption. AI in itself is going to be 20% of energy consumption, over 20% of energy consumption in the next 5 years. That's what current projections are. And others are using it to grab satellite images and identify where, we have the most deforestation, to know where we should focus our replantation efforts. Others are using it to basically identify through satellite imagery where the biggest, methane deposits on Earth are, and then penalize the oil companies or companies that are causing them, or hold them accountable for fixing it. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to need regulation on which projects that are using AI are actually for the good of the planet, because AI is so energy intensive. We have to be, as a planet and as a species, selective about how we use it and what we use it for. And I think that we also need to focus on the funding, like Elena said, because without the funding, none of this is really going to move forward. That's it on my end, Luke. I'll let you have time back.
Thank you, Vijay. So, wow. I just want to pick up on the ethical, responsible side of things. How can we're talking about climate change is a problem without boundaries. We need financing. We need real-time access. Amy, you said as well. So how about how can we organize? I mean, how there's all these projects happening in different places. From an ethical, responsible AI point of view, how can we move forward and ensure that that is considered as well within these projects?
From my end, I think I have clarity on the fact that AI is not the issue; it's the creation of AI. AI doesn't be regulated. The humans need to be regulated. The developers. That we're always the problem. So we can't blame AI or Skynet or the Terminator. And also over-regulating is becoming an issue now. Every country, every organization want to do their own thing. So we're still repeating the same cycles since the beginning of time. And as a neurodivergent person, we're incapable of pretending that there's not a pink elephant in the room. If we see it, and we can't not see it. So being in the industry for 20 years now, I'm quite astonished that we're still kind of there, still at the same point. Yeah, the algorithms are amazing and all of that, but everybody's holding their own data. And we're talking about finances. I'd like to challenge you a little bit there, that it's not a matter of finances. That data is sitting there everywhere in different places, in different locations, and everyone is regulating their own thing and keeping their own thing, even if they're not benefiting from it. And I'd like to propose that people stop thinking about the possessiveness or ownership of something and over-regulating things. It could be an open source platform regulated by a single entity like the United Nations or the UNICEF. And there's permissions and regulations and policy that are very clear, as long as it's for climate change or sustainability, that these are the conditions to use it. But we need to open the access for the data because it's all sitting there. It's sitting right there looking at us, and we're not utilizing it properly. I know that will require some money, but it's not the challenge. I think the challenge is convincing people that sharing is caring and you're not going to lose anything. Actually, that can produce more finances and more efficient allocation of revenue. So we're always going to be able to make money. It's just let's be smart about it at this point. That I see here in the grids, it's just falling apart from time to time because the grids in different locations are not even connected. And the power plants in each different location have their own system. And the people in every power plant have their own way of doing things. And I'm just wondering why is it that we keep just doing the same thing over and over again when we know it haven't worked? It never worked. Everyone have their own way of doing things, but the data is not being utilized and it's ancient. At one point, there was this conversation that I had with a client, and he was saying we had, documents from the 1990s, and it's just sitting there. And they could make so much from that money alone, from that data alone, like data-driven insight, and prevent so many costs if they just put it in a data lake. I think it's us maybe exaggerating sometimes that it's a big task, but it starts by talking to the policymakers, by suggesting an open access infrastructure regulated for specific purposes like this, climate change, sustainability. Allow people to experiment and try, even if they don't have the background, because that's where the creativity happened. Imagine if there's an open access data and we can have the data before the fire happened, because it is there from the satellite, so we can actually predict it before it happened instead of sending the firefighters to, I don't know, potential death. It's all there. I think it's just a matter of being more optimal in our choices, letting go of, ownership of the data. Back in the day, we used to fight about land. Now it's data. It's not sufficient, and it's not working. It never worked. And I think it's just time to just be honest and know that the solution is quite straightforward, that we just start talking about it, not overcomplicate it or overregulate it, and just allow the people that can actually solve the problem to access that data and experiment on it. It's just, let's start talking and like brainstorming. And even if we disagree, that's fine, but we can't be still here at this day and age. Apologies, I must sound frustrated today.
No, thanks, Amy. And
Just let everybody access the data. It's just sitting there.
yeah,
I've seen it.
it's frustrating. I feel your frustration. Elena, anything to add?
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone could say it better than Amy did. I mean, this is
ADHD. Sorry.
We all have it, but this is a topic that, I mean, I sat in many meetings at Amazon talking about the ethics of AI and how we're working about it. And, they also formed their own committee, but who's on the committee, right? Who are those people who are the partners who are taking those decisions? And that's over just specifically like, Amazon's data. And it is about open sourcing data. Absolutely. So for the sake of efficiency, with all the wonderful questions we have today, I think that I'll pass that and say, well done, Amy.
Thank you.
Ravi, anything to add?
Definitely. I mean, I would like to again highlight one more very critical aspect here, that rightly said that data is already sitting. We are maybe we are aware, but there are 2 to 3 reasons. First of all, who am I, to be careful about those kind of, data sets? Oh, exactly. I would be worried about it. So actually, we need a Fitbit band for everybody to understand that what carbon footprint they actually, work with, so they can understand that, hey, this is what the emission, individual level emission. First of all, I'm just not kidding, but yeah, this is the kind of reality. Unless we understand that, instead of digging wells and the kind of the things, we're getting more oil and gas explorations and all. If we put trees on the planet, that would be the first thing we should start with, to be honest, apart from AI and all the other things. Yeah, but when it comes to governance and ethics, right? So that has to be from within. First of all, it's a social responsibility of everybody, be it our organization, be it the leaders, the regulatory authorities, let's say the exchange commissions, or it could be the kind of security boards, or it could be stock exchanges, right from there to judiciary, legislatures, whatnot. But the main thing is there is like, we need to be very much cognizant in terms of those aspects where we already are aware of one word, that is greenwashing these days. So greenwashing is actually misleading information in terms of the, hey, we are saving the planet, we are doing this and that. Ideally, it is not. Who is going to monitor them? So people start investing. Again, it's like purely from the equity perspective. So if we can promote green indices, have fairness on understanding how exactly they can work out on these kind of CSR funds, how exactly they're leveraging that and working on easy reporting. How do they get the carbon credits? If that particular transparency is there, the black box is not there and transparency is there, I'm sure we are going to have the better world. Second thing is like, in terms of what I should say is this AI models itself. So there also we see that there is a bias and fairness issues, right? So we need to understand that these models, whatever we are using for identifying risk or mitigating them, should be also working in tandem. So we need proper governance framework for not only for AI models, but also for the kind of the regulators, where they are actually able to see with transparency how exactly the funds are getting utilized, and what is the kind of the rationale behind greenwashing. We need to be cautious about that. That's the thing. Now, how exactly it happens? So there we need a matured relationship between PPP, right? So it's amongst PPP. So it's like public-private partnerships we need to talk about, and they can really come up with some kind of innovative ideas. Like Amy is there; she's innovator, leading innovator. If we talk about Elena is there, Vijay, I have seen him personally in terms of how exactly he's taking pains. Day and night he is working on how exactly they're they can mitigate the planet risk. So like that. So yeah, the very important factor is that we need a governance authority, or let's say the task force, which exactly takes care of this in the well manner, wherein every track is there on uh, monetizing the data, utilization of data. Not only that, but utilization of funds, they should be in the right hands. Otherwise, greed and fear and love, these three things are always there for any reason to cause the impact upon. So we need to understand that we are working with goodness state than going for a passionate workaround and just making the things more vulnerable. And obviously the usage of these kind of the access of these particular tools of AI tools or whatever you're talking about, it should be having again equitable opportunities to everybody of every section of the society. And lastly, not everybody, not anybody should be biased in terms of penalizing them on the carbon credits, or let's say the kind of advantages, undue advantages over there. So biasness, fairness, transparency, these are the three pillars of success, which I think should be there within the system.
So, Amy, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I want to ask Dr. Ravi there about do you think really that we need more regulation? Like, I think
You
the
rightly
panel,
said that.
if
You
we
rightly
want
said that we don't want to get into over regulation. So I'm not saying over regulation, but filter the regulations in such a way that we have the best one, to be honest. And this best one should be with the matured understanding and with, let's say, the latest advancements which are happening, because quantum is coming up, right? The things are like we are using heavy computes these days, so their monitoring is very important. And maybe the kind of previous
out of
legal aspect of laws.
curiosity, what's the highest quality, the best policy that you find it inclusive now in terms of regulation that you've seen? I want to hear from each one of you because I'm curious to find out.
Yeah, some of them I already mentioned, like how exactly we are working on the frameworks, which are again coming up from the task force on climate-related financial disclosures, right? So there they are talking about the scenario planning on climate risk and working on that. Climate risk assessment framework-based strategies are there, which are there. IPCC's climate risk framework. So I think these are some of the tools which we can say than a the overall organization. Obviously, Kyoto protocols and let's say Paris agreements, they are adding value to us. But yeah, what next? Now we need advancements into the next level of generation, because AI is moving and so as the planet and everything, right? So we need to be cautious there. I mean,
Yeah,
over
we need
to
to,
Vijay, and if they
like,
have
what's the
different
policy, and just let's scale it and get it done and over with so we can move on. But Vijay, and
Yeah,
I'm just
no.
curious because I read a few of them and I was surprised.
Sorry, what was your question, Amy?
Like the policy that is mostly inclusive, I find the EU Act is the most like really heavily detailed, that if everyone just adopt it, maybe that will save us the hassle in terms of every single entity coming up with their own policies and penalizing their own way.
When you talk about regulation policy, Amy, are you talking about AI or climate?
AI, like regulating on AI ethically, responsibly, just regardless of the application, of course, like whether it's sustainability or
no,
climate.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. It's moving so fast and people are moving in multiple directions. And I think, I mean, what's really needed at the end of the day is somebody like the UN or somebody like a global organization to come in and come up with the framework. But that being said, it is a complicated problem because, AI is a superpower in a way, because it's only going to get better as the brain gets bigger, the virtual brain that gets created with the right data sets, to Amy's point. And, it goes back to what data is open versus closed, which projects are funded versus not funded.
Yeah.
Within the models themselves, I mean, what type of prompting is allowed versus not allowed? You can have malicious prompting, but should that really be allowed? So I think there's a whole open, closed conversation but that conversation needs to be, at the global level. Cat's out of the bag in a way. This got put in the hands of a lot of people, probably not with, a lot of regulation around it to start. So it really exposed the power to both good and bad humans around the world. And it's really, up to the good humans to use it for good, and really government bodies to try and put restrictions around using it for bad. But I think that there's so many layers to that, whether it be the AI models themselves, the data behind it, the types of projects that they're impacting. When I think about this, and one of the reasons I even started what I'm working on is I think even regulations. That's why I asked regulation on AI or climate or what, because for me, I go back to the basics of, we have indigenous communities that are getting so impacted by all of the technology, all of the private companies. And I mean, I was just with the president of the indigenous people of Brazil a few months ago, and she literally said, I am pushing the red panic button. Your garbage is showing up on my back door. That indigenous community that guards the rainforest makes up 5% of the population and is responsible for 85% of the biodiversity on Earth. If we impact those already struggling populations, it's going to be even worse. So AI is just adding more pressure on top. But when I think about regulation, I'm almost like, hey, let's start back with the basics. Give the forest back to the indigenous people. Let them do the work, what they're happy to do to protect the planet. Because without that rainforest, it's essentially the lungs of the earth. Without that rainforest, we're in deep trouble. But I agree with all of your points, guys. And thank you for the collective thoughts. Very powerful.
Vijay, I would like to comment on that. First of all, I do want to get back to really focusing on climate tech here, rather than just how AI in general needs to be regulated. I saw the next question coming and things, but yeah, I think when we're really looking at the biodiversity corridors, the most essential lungs of the planet areas, like the areas of the planet that are most needed to be supported during climate change. And with AI, obviously, we are looking at mostly indigenous community areas, local and indigenous community areas across the world. It's many third world countries that we're talking about here. And those are the countries that don't have access to the types of technologies in which we're talking about. And you can say, okay, well, this software exists or that technology exists. Or if you join this program with that platform, maybe it'll get funded to be able to do this kind of project. But without that local indigenous knowledge, without the boots on the ground participation, and without the alignment with how the community culturally, spiritually, and with their local knowledge knows exactly how to care for that area, it won't be cared for properly. And we've seen that through years and years of work, just bringing water into wells of areas without actually giving them access on being able how to do that. So being able to and as we talk a lot about data and how much data there is in the world, and that data is all accessible and we should all share it and we should all make it very public, when you're talking about very down to the earth local data, it absolutely doesn't exist. You still can't calculate carbon on a data level for carbon sequestration in any kind of wetlands, and wetlands include mangroves. I mean, these are areas that were, with the ocean acidification, this is coming directly off of phosphorus and nitrogen coming down from tributaries and waterways from large agricultural farms that directly affect a lot of local and indigenous communities living in coastal areas, living in forested areas. And I mean, I absolutely agree that a high level of support, finances, projects, and technologies needs to come in partnership with working with local and indigenous communities. I don't use the terminology just, give it back to the local indigenous, because I think we are on a time scale that's so strategically important for high level impact that there are a lot of technologies that can be utilized to rapidify and make these agricultural things happen on a much faster level. Now, it is difficult to work within, with both, to be able to offer both. You can't just say, oh, here's the technology and expect them to go through years of training or this kind of stuff. You have to be able to really have strong level of partnerships to be able to say, you guys are the best protectors of this land, which I 100% agree with. And this is how we can support you. How can we work best with your knowledge to be able to do so?
I think we just need to leave them alone. Like whoever is there and they want to do their thing, just leave them alone. We need to respect that people want to do their thing and we want to do our thing. what we damaged, we need to fix. At the modern society, it's all like the trees and everything. It's just harvesting their resources and leaving them to deal with the consequences. But the data is there. If you look at it from the satellites, everything is there. It's like there's even decommissioned satellites that are just sitting there that you can buy them. I was shook when I found that information. I know it's a bit expensive, like from 1 million to 2, but it's so accessible to a way that it makes me question who's holding the shackles and why are they exclusive? Like AI is a class kind of thing. That there's classism. It's not really democratized. You don't deserve to have that access because I don't know, whatever. We're not going to go to the classes in AI. But if you look at AI itself and you want to know where's the classes, just objectively, what is AI right now? The one that is built thus far, how is it created? If you want to describe it, who was it created by? I'm not pointing fingers, but there was this prediction. It's a bit like funny and a bit scary that given that the majority of the developments thus far, if it continues the same, that 80% of it or whatever that percentage is by the same group. So whatever AI is going to happen in the future, it's going to be that group, just AI. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a good group. It's like majority of it is like middle-aged white man from a specific class and education. And then there's a part that is also a brown man. And then there's, I don't know, 2 or 3%, I don't know about specific number, but it's 2 or 3% that is not that. Now, do we want an AI that only see humanity from that perspective? And the others, they don't even see them as human because they don't have enough information to validate that they're human. We are creating, I feel like we're playing God. We're creating our own kind of legacy or a version of ourselves, but it's only exclusive for a specific group. I'm not saying that group is not valid. Like they led you guys led the initiative, but I think we want the AI to see the others as also humans, because it would be dangerous that if the AI in the future doesn't know that even if it's not that it's also they're considered humanity, but it lacks the information about it. I think nobody wants that.
Yeah, so I think we need a conscious AI approach here, understanding right and wrong aspects.
Regulation, transparency, diversity, please. I'm sick of being
one last thing, Yami, we were discussing about what about the kind of the plantations, and let's say if we talk about monitoring in terms of the planet altogether. So there are certain models in place. I had been working on some of the hands-on simulations over there, that when we talk about remote sensing, when we talk about NDVI classifications, we do that. So we have remote sensing technologies wherein we send in red, the infrared, and it gets converted back to the red, and we identify that, hey, because of the chlorophyll content over there in the plants, like which vegetations are actually healthy, which are not. So that kind of scoring is already there. But now we need to understand is that what about the soil health? So that for that also we need the kind of a scanning over there. We need the soil monitoring. We need the flood inundation models in place, right? HECRA is that is hydrologic engineering center river analysis system is there, which is taking care of these kind of GIS based workarounds. Sea level rise and coastal risk models are there, which is exactly not everybody might be aware of, but yeah, the groups are working in terms of maintaining the ecological balance. So there is ecological niche model for species distributions, right, which are already there, and these are all GIS based workarounds. I also came to one of the use case in my previous engagement, where we're talking about how we can leverage GIS, AI, and all together to identify that, hey, this is what exactly is the anomaly over there on the planet with respect to the emissions happening, with respect to the let's say vegetation wise or geographical wise, the kind of risks which are happening over there, be it your the forest fires to the species which are endangered and all. So those kind of technologies can be leveraged along with AI. I think that is the righteous way. And who is going to be the user? Who is going to be let's say the provider for this? That is the question. So I think every individual organization has the social responsibility, and they should definitely have 2 to 5% of investments into these kind of green scenarios. And we don't need AI, but we need green AI at this juncture, to be honest. So that's what exactly I would like to wind up with the current question of Luca. And I think Luca is also he's a global leader in sustainability. So if he has a point, definitely can pave the way forward to the audience and us.
No, thanks, Ravi. I'm just seeing there's a question in from the audience around, just to close off on the regulation of AI, and we talked about the UN being a potential organization that can regulate. Is there anyone else, and what can we do to to look for or to push for a certain organization to regulate? Whether it's climate tech, with AI. I mean, is it
So they
coordination, because you also have an overlap, right, between climate tech and AI. So how do you coordinate?
directly or indirectly, United Nations would be there as the supreme organization over there. So UNEP is there, right? The environment program, and with that, they are working on AI climate risk. Not only the creating the awareness, but also having those kind of programs so that we can understand that how exactly the things are happening over the planet, and we can work out on the disclosures which we are talking about, like in terms of the financial institutions, how exactly they are leveraging these particular uh, uh, the the funds to utilize them for the safeguarding the planet. So I think those kind of organizations are already there. EU Act, if you talk about from the AI perspective and all, they're fabulous. But still, I think FAO, Food Agriculture Organization, to United Nations NEP, and that is UNEP program and all, they need to handle each other. And the intermediary could be ITU, which exactly again could be helping everybody to understand that how telecommunication would be utilized in getting the right information at right place with right people, and so there is no uh, security breaches in terms of data privacy, access issues, or whatsoever cross-border relationship it's about. So we need to understand there should not be blame game that hey, you emit too much, I emit less. So developed versus developing versus underdeveloped. These kind of things are happening over a period of time. So let's get devoid of that. And one particular religion of the planet, that's the Mother Nature, safeguarding that. That's it. I think we are a one world, one family.
Thanks,
think-
Remy.
For
Yes,
me,
Amy?
I think, it would be great if we have the Switzerland, the Switzerland version, just create that from scratch. And there was this proposal of solving the issue by the next generation. Like, listen, our time is gone, but I think the next generation is the solution. We can't pass our prejudice, or it's hard for us to change. Like myself, I'm millennial, as much as I want to say that I'm open-minded, it's not our world anymore. We're not going to live in the time that our children will suffer the consequences of what we did. So that's what I'm focusing on right now, is bringing the children to actually have this kind of movement. And in the future, that will create the Switzerland of Alpha, Generation Alpha, I think it's called. They will do the change, because, I think our time is, we're trying to change so much, but we're not as flexible. So I have hope for the future generation.
I completely agree, Amy. I actually think the youth will play a key role in pushing all these initiatives forward in the years to come. And, they use the most digital resources today. They almost consume the most energy than any other generation before them. And they're going to have the biggest impact. So I really, I've spent some time with some young activists, and there are plenty of passionate youth that really have energy to take this on. And I think it's our job to help support and lift them.
It reminds me of the discussion we had, Amy, right, with Sasra,
Yeah.
right?
Very
12-year girl, right? So
the children are not like us. Like, we couldn't put two words together when we were 10 or 12. So I think that they will fix it.
And a lot of our solutions need solutions.
They will sort it out.
Like, they are really good, like generative AI is amazing. It also has a massive carbon footprint, right?
youth energy.
Yes.
Not like youth
Let's
energy,
not
but
go there.
Mhm.
Let's not go there. But yeah, I think it's hard for us to change. Millennials and Gen X and baby boomers, it's hard for us to all come together and agree on something. So now I'm focusing on, what's just the next generation. I'll give it a go. Let's see.
But one more thing, we should not, definitely out leverage the ventures over there, because if head is in the right direction, we need not worry about the feet. So energy of the youth, but definitely the guidance and the experience which the genius carries. I think that kind of what we can say, the kind of exchange of the information and let's say the knowledge altogether should be there. So I think, yeah, that should be ecosystem where, as I mentioned, individual to corporate, body corporate to investors, it's everybody's responsibility. It's our planet, right? So I think let's not think of that he or she would be responsible for. Let's start, by the way, from our side, whatever we can do. I think we are doing the best in terms of what we could do, but more is required.
Yeah. So taking up follow up on that point, regarding the future generations, what kind of skills you think we need to be they need to be focusing on, the next generation, to address some of the issues that we mentioned today? I think for our audience listening, and if they're wondering, what are the right skills and education available that they can focus on.
Yeah, critical thinking, critical thinking, question everything, critical thinking and transparency. It's
innovation is the only way, because we have less time, to take major action, right, to save the planet. So
it's the issue that we have. That's where we're failing. It's critical thinking and transparency.
Yeah, I also think like a critical skill will be, being very good with data and understanding data. To Amy's original point around the data, and the power for the AI is in the data. So I think, to be using the AI for the youth to solve these problems, they need to really focus on being good with data and critical thinking.
And lastly, the risk management. That's the foremost, because once we understand risk, we can mitigate that. If we don't calculate or quantify risk, we are even not bothered. So that risk calculations, I think those particular strategies, climate risk understanding, financial modeling risk, and all these things are actually interrelated from the financial market perspective to the governance perspective. So I think risk management is the last thing, or let's say the first thing they can also pick up in terms of understanding and having right techniques. And like US GARP is there, right? Global Association of Risk Professionals. I think they are also having certain ways and means to undertake these kind of things. So I think therein AI is also playing a vital role. So AI and GARP kind of mechanisms or risk management practices should be there.
And then, of course, science and chemistry. I mean, those things will never go away. New ways to create more energy efficiency, new science. There's several people working on fusion, other techniques to come up with more energy efficiency. So I think the youth that are focused on those core science and chemistry will also have a large impact.
Right.
I think that I agree with everyone. I mean, obviously, right now there's still a lot around data and technology that is necessary. Certainly around sciences, life sciences for sure. But I do think that, we're talking about the new generation, or we're talking about the birth of the generation, or the starting of their careers, or 40 years into their careers, of what's needed. Because one of the things I think that we're really already starting to see the suffer of is the lack of understanding between the soft skills and the hard skills. And over the next 25 to 30, 40, 50 years, if this continues on the level of everyone going to school for software engineering and mechanical engineering and sciences, and not focusing on a lot of those soft skills, the comprehension and legitimacy between the two is really lost, and we will suffer from that. So
totally agree, Elena.
More effort on the soft skills.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point around, with AI, one thing that I see and I believe is artists and creators, people who are very creative, will have a lot of power in the future, because that's where that different way of thinking comes from. And with AI, actually the core technology skills of knowing computer science matter less in the future. It's really the power to be imaginative and creative and think of a solution that no one else is going to think of. And that really comes from art and creativity. Yeah. So I'm glad you said something, Elena, because I truly believe that artists and creators are going to have a lot of power with this AI. It's almost a transfer of power from people who were core data scientists to people who can think differently?
Well, I think a lot of that is on our educational systems. I work very closely with Cal Berkeley here in California, and they're great at coming up with new master's programs, like Masters of Climate Solutions, and these different programs which are very broad and can be from anyone who's working in the field. But I do think that at the first degree of higher level education, we're going to have to really, and hopefully will be seeing more and more of these left brain, right brain, the soft skills meeting the hard skills. And a lot of the kids of this generation, they do speak tech. And so having the understanding of both, you don't need to be a deep level data scientist all the way through that then changes, but being able to understand what it means to work in data, what is AI, and be able to mix the soft skills is really the combination what we need to see, not only educationally wise pushed in the schools, but sought after and having more positions for those kids then coming out and looking for jobs.
One more quality, I think, or let's say the very significant aspect here I would like to bring in once again. Without that, even if we are having skills, if they are having deep tech understanding, things go waste. That's the love for the planet, the mother nature, because that can, if you're not having knowledge, if you're not having skills, you'll find ways and means to collate all these things and bring the best things for the planet. So without love for the nature, it never going to happen. Because if you talk about data scientists, they just get their money and they just make the models without even thinking what impact it could be bringing into the planet, right, to safeguard the things, and they just have to meet their own task, right? So devotional service is the first thing which exactly they should be capturing, irrespective of their having knowledge or nothing else, right? I mean, it's basically secondary to me. The first thing is that how you are surrendered to serve the society, the planet, and then the things actually happens. You don't do the things, right? It's like the must to have thing, I guess. The love.
No one's going to listen. They're just going to do it if it's something that they're convinced with. That's why I say the next generation is to help. But Vijay, that's a very brilliant kind of concept that I haven't thought of. They are born with AI, right? They know how technology is just a given, just like us riding bicycles. So it's the creativity bit, the soft skills as well, Elena. That's something that, so they will be all nerds that are so smart, but we have to teach them how to communicate because that's lacking.
How to socialize. I mean, they also
be creative
and be creative. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a given that they code. My daughter, she's just 9 and she built her own games on Roblox. It's, to her, it's nothing. And I think the concept of college will disappear. They will just create their own jobs based on the skills that they have. They're unattainable, which is good, but I don't know what's going to happen there. So it is going to shift, but I don't know what the shift's going to look like. Finger crossed.
Okay, I'm going to shift gears here, if that's okay, to talk about, we've talked about the, ClimateTech and AI. I wanted to talk about energy efficiency and renewable energy and the role of AI there. And any of you have any views on where we are with, the role of AI and increasing energy efficiency, or the use of renewable energy today and going forward?
I mean, I'll step in really quick. I think, this is actually a field I'm working in right now. I think energy efficiency is absolutely critical. Moving things to more green energies, in coming up with new solutions, new types of energies, but then also being very selective about optimizing the energy consumption and usage that we have today. So, we know this wave of AI is coming in the next 5 years. It's already started, but in 5 years, the world will look very different than it does today. The level of energy that's going to be required from various channels is going to be very high. And I mean, this is actually one of the reasons why we started what we're even doing at OptiCloud, to reduce the energy consumption just by, we have waste management in the physical world. We're creating waste management in the digital world. So let's get rid of the trash. Let's recycle the virtual trash. And, that will in itself reduce energy consumption by over 30%. So, it makes some room by just eliminating the trash for this next wave of energy to come. But that being said, even the existing energy consumption is hurting the planet tremendously. So we really need to think about new ways. And I know there's a ton of brilliant people coming up with amazing solutions for this around the world. So, I know we've been a little bit, hard on the problem today, but there are really a lot of great initiatives happening around the world, especially on the energy side.
Yeah, so I think monitoring the energy first and then keeping it tracked, identifying the anomalies over there, because we are having energy. So if you don't use that energy, we won't be creating, right? So for creation, energy is required. But monitoring that energy, identifying the anomalies, and having the kind of recommendation systems wherever we are working on these kind of platforms, like Vijay is working on cloud-based monitoring, where he can work out on the cloud data center performance, the cloud wise service wise performance checks and all. We need to identify that what is there in scope 1, 2, and 3, and for what, as per the GHG protocols. And basis those particular scopes, are there some more scopes or let's say elements which are missing? If yes, then we can definitely have those recommendations. But I think direct emissions, indirect, and let's say energy consumption, everything is properly addressed by those particular metrics which are in place. We now need to implement them to the grassroots level, identifying that if I want to identify carbon intensity and carbon footprint for my house, my family, versus if I'm using my data center, I'm having my data center, right? Or let's say I'm having an let's say the judicial system, how exactly we are implementing those computes, we're implementing those particular let's say the energy devices within the system, within the plants, within agricultural world, and we can map that accordingly. So mapping is the first thing. Monitoring, it means observability, having that. And wherever you trace that anomaly, just trigger that, send the user back the information that, hey, this is what exactly you are consuming more than it, which exactly is an optimized version of it. So then again, I think generative AI is putting a way together in terms of having multi-agent systems which you can build. And this multi-agent systems, what they do is they try to interact with each other, identifying the right sizing for how much allocation of the energy was already being given for this task, where exactly there is energy loss, where exactly I can optimize it further, and then I can save my money as well. So it's like everything is related, right? The green ops technologies versus FinOps kind of world, they're all integrated at this juncture. That is the kind of missing link. And therein we can say that, hey, this is what comes the best in class performance of energy optimization algorithms, right? When we use this algorithm, they all should be energy efficient, right? So whatever is being given the input, whatever the output we are generating, the carbon content is to be triggered, understood in equivalent framework, right? Whatever we can understand in the best way.
Any comments, Elena, Amy?
Not really.
So I'm interested personally in the consumption aspect of using AI and the energy impact of that. What's the balance between the benefit that you get from AI in climate tech versus the impact on the climate of using AI? Have you seen any studies or projects on that topic?
So, I mean, the latest stats I've seen, Luca, they just literally came out in the last 5 days, and from some private sources, but they're very high-level sources. But it's 20%. This is just for the U.S. 20% of the U.S. energy in the next 5 years will come from AI. And this is kind of goes back to the conversation that we were having earlier, which is why I think it's very important for regulation, because I think it's important to be selective about who's using AI for what. So, like, are we just causing this massive energy consumption spike for making cool avatars for somebody's, video presentation? Is that really the best use of the energy consumption? And I think being more critical, if we at least get rid of the garbage, which is what I'm working on, that at least gets us to break even, sort of. But we can do better. We can do better. And in the future, there's going to be use cases that we don't even know today, that where people are going to have these large data sets that are going to even require more energy from the AI. So, we need to get ahead of it and be selective about what should be accessible for the AI to really be used on.
I think Go ahead.
Really appreciate you bringing up digital trash. I have yet to see like solid solutions for this, or many people really working on the project. So I'm super excited to learn more and hear more about what you guys are working on. It is a massive issue.
Yeah.
And certainly with energy, it's one of the largest components of really waste of energy. And I think no one has been trained or taught to think about the sustainability usage of the energy in which they are utilizing their screens, their computers, their generative AI, all of it. So it's
this is
a lot of innovations to happen.
exactly what we're working on, Elena. So excited to talk to you about it.
I think it's, from my end, it's about renewable energy. To solve it, let's have renewable energy to start with. And then we think about the thing that's actually using that energy, because we are in desperate need to have AI in every step of renewing the energy, like from the start of having allocating the right amount of energy from the beginning. So you predict for every household, just allocate the right amount to avoid, the waste that is happening at the moment, and even the grids shutting down because they're too much or there's too little, that people don't get. Like the optimal solutions just have AI, have access to the needs and allocate the resources in an optimal and efficient way, so we don't have wasted energy that is just, dispersing like that. And probably even predicting, maybe if we can manage, I know that there's batteries there, but I don't think they're efficient enough to hold it that long. So that needs
Yeah, so there's a lot of hardware projects that are happening, not that I'm working on, that others are working on, where, they're creating new batteries, new chips that are more energy efficient, less carbon intensive, but could do the same workload, to your point.
yeah.
And then there's, people like us who are focused on the virtual trash. I think about it like, when you leave your home, most people nowadays try to turn the lights off because they're conscious of the energy consumption. But in the virtual world, we're essentially leaving all the lights on all the time. And there's too many switches to turn off, and no one knows how to turn them off. And this is why we're creating a platform with AI, because the AI has a large enough brain to process and know which switches to turn off and predict when to turn it off when.
That's brilliant. They should do that as well for energy, renewable energy. Switches off when it's using it, then
that's on our roadmap, Amy.
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that, because it's a switch, right?
Yeah, the grids, the electricity grids need basically smarter grids. And I know there are people working on this now as well. But this is where AI is going to have a huge impact in the positive way. Even though it is energy consumption, it's going to be a net benefit. And I think this is where, organizations like the UN or governments, they'll have to come up with what is that calculation, so that on the other end of using the AI, how do you prove that it was actually for the benefit? And maybe there's exceptions like healthcare, where we decide that, like, hey, you can consume more energy because it's going to lead to saving lives and saving X number of lives. And I think AI is, transformative for healthcare, to just speed up the drug discovery process, to, gene discovery, all of that. It's amazing.
Yeah, but the grids need to be balanced.
And even the categorization. Sorry.
1 minute.
Please.
It's if you don't mind, just a final thought that we have the need for renewable energy to reduce the carbon emission. So it's like a cycle, right? The only missing part is having it all connected. So it's all about these different elements talking together. And again, accessibility of the data. So if the grid get the right information, that now release whatever is in the battery or whatever you have in the battery, release it now, because it's a downtime. There's not much, maybe there's need or not much need. All these can be traced like really automatically and in real time, because it's on, on the battery. So when someone is at home and there's a demand on the grid, but they already have a battery, the battery will be turned on automatically. So, they can utilize that, because otherwise it won't be even stored. I think it's stored 2 or 3 days, would it? The most efficient battery, I think 2 or 3 days, and then it's gone if it's not used.
Usually 3 days, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I saw different things, but I'm not sure the latest. How long can it store?
Great. So I think we're coming to the end of the section. I just want to give you all a chance to give your final comments before we close. So I want to go first, and I just want to appreciate all the inputs you've given. I've learned a lot already today. So thank you for sharing your views and your knowledge. Let's just have a round of closing comments. Starting maybe with you, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was actually a fun time, went by very quickly. I think I'm gonna keep emphasizing on the fact that we need an infrastructure that can support open access, real-time access to the data, so we can actually do something about it, because that's the only way to do data-driven decisions, and that's what we're lacking. The algorithm, the AI is here, it's fed with not so good, so healthy data to make the right decisions, and adopting a preventative approach instead of reactive, having more diverse voices on the table and being comfortable with the unfamiliar. That's where creativity happen, and allow the next generation make the call. I think that my generation, the generations before, it's always like the bigger or the oldest that always makes the decision, but they're so disconnected from the reality that is right now. So let's do better, because we didn't like it when it happened to us. Let's do better and just admit that the next generation is the one leading the future, is going to be living in the future. So we empower them with the right information, we raise them well, and empower them to, first of all, not be shy or scared to vocalize their opinion, have critical, thinking and decision making, and hopefully we don't pass any of our, outdated thoughts. That's basically what I think. Open source, diversity, and let the kids make decisions. They're going to live in the future, not us.
Thank you, Amy. Elena?
Yeah, sure. I think those are all great points, of course. For me, the last note that I wanted to follow up on is I really believe that to harness AI's potential for building a sustainable future, we really have to prioritize its applications in natural capital valuations and conservation, including the use of AI for monitoring, managing ecosystems, predicting changes in biodiversity, and the optimization in the resource use. And governments and industries really have to be investing in AI-powered tools to assess ecosystem services, enabling better policy making, sustainable resource management, and by integrating the use of AI into these levels of conservation strategies, we can make more informed decisions and protect and restore the planet's natural capital. I mean, there's some really great new studies and research coming out. There's the Capitals Coalition coming out of Europe, which is a fantastic group working in natural capital. There's, if anyone's a bookworm like I am, there's a tremendous book Andre Hoffman just wrote called The New Nature of Business. Fantastic book. I think we really need to start looking at, where the money's going, how we're actually able to support things that are going to be the broadest level of impact around the use of sustaining the planet. So, yeah.
I took the note on the book, so I'm a bookworm as well. Thanks. Over to you, Ravi.
So for me, AI holds the power to revolutionize the entire climate action, right? But actually, when it comes to the true impact, it is totally dependent on the responsible and equitable use of it. So we need to democratize AI for climate action. That's one. Second thing is that if you talk about how we can motivate everybody to take a part into it, so there are three motivations. One, the motivation of fear. So the governance system should be very much strong to bring in the laws and regulations identifying those particular life-threatening emission generators, penalize them, and identify that they can be further ignored in terms of any kind of a advantage. Second is the power of the second pillar. First was, I mentioned that it was the fear factor. Second factor which impacts over there to motivate is the greed factor. So we should have green indices to be boosted. So what happens is, if every company is having kind of a leverage of 2% to 5% of equity investments are mandatory for making this the environment green, and they can be listed on green indices owing to that. So nothing better than that. So they will just do all these things because of money factor. And the last factor is the love factor, wherein the NGOs and the other organizations on its selflessly can work out like we are doing, and they can save the planet altogether. So these are the three pillars which can bind everybody on the universe, right, to save us.
Thank you, Ravi. And again, last but not least, Vijay. You're on mute.
Max.
Okay.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you everyone for the time today. It was a wonderful conversation. I mean, I'll just leave you similar to Ravi. I agree that there's strong need for government and private industry to collaborate more closely. Specifically, government holding private industry more accountable for pollution and carbon tax. We really need to see that move forward to see real change. And then, to Elena's point, and Amy's point around the youth, I really want to see more youth involved in climate action. And if anyone is truly out there watching, even passionate, get in touch. I will get you involved.
That's a great message to finish on. So I'd like to then thank you again for your time today. Thank you to the audience.
One last thing, Luca. We are actually, everybody is looking for your feedback and your inputs. You being the global sustainable leader, we would like to hear from you and take that friendly advice that, hey, how exactly we can make this system be better. Luca.
Yeah, well, from my point of view, I in my role, I work with different companies and look at specifically the sustainability of IT and how we can help reduce energy consumption, optimize, those topics that we've discussed already, measuring and reporting is a big area where we want to try and give visibility and insights to our customers so that they can make informed decisions on things like when to put IT on standby, and reduce the energy consumption. So for example, when people leave the office and they don't need the lights on, for example, then have those lights go off. And AI is already well integrated in a system like for example, WebEx. We use a lot of AI already in there. For example, to do real-time translation of conversations. So if we were now speaking in different languages, you could see what the other person is saying in real time. And then also reducing the noise in the background. So that's also done through AI. So noise reduction, so you don't hear that dog, for example, barking in the background, or any kind of noise you wouldn't hear as part of that, and that's again driven from here. So AI is already integrated, but I think there's a lot more, of course, that has to be done and can be done with the potential of AI in the area of IT. But today we're talking about climate change and the potential of AI, and I think we looked at different aspects of that. I think it was really interesting. A lot of challenges ahead, but a lot of opportunities as well. So, it'd be great to do this in a year's time and see where we are in a year from now, and get your feedback again and see if we made any progress. So I want to thank you again, and I know we're just over time, so and I want to respect your time schedules as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you to the audience for their patience, and thank you to the Total Brighter Institute for allowing us to have this conversation today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.